Hey, soccer fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Feed the Fire podcast. I'm your host, Nick. Thank you, as always, for joining me, whether via your favorite podcast carrier or via YouTube. It's great to have you listening and joining the conversation and talking a little Chicago Fire in Major League Soccer. The Chicago Fire this past weekend did not have a match. They were off for the first week of the league's cup play, but they did have a big event going on at the Fire Pitch. They had their regular training session that Saturday morning, but then also had autograph sessions and attended the Meet the Players party. So we're going to talk a little about that special season ticket member benefit, an event that I was fortunate enough to be able to attend with my two sons and some other family of ours. Also, we're going to just briefly, look ahead at the Chicago Fire's next match that takes place Saturday, August 9th, down at SeatGeek Stadium in Bridgeview, hosting Western Conference opponent LAFC. Will they have their big new signing available? We're going to talk about that in part coming up, but I'm going to try to do a little bit of a better breakdown, a little bit more of a specific preview in a future episode. So subscribe, like, stay tuned, turn on your notifications, do all that good stuff. Then I want to look at some transfers. There have been a lot of different transfers, silly season as people are calling it, around the league. We're going to take a look at some of the notable signings and maybe some not as notable signings, but things that could have an impact on the MLS playoff picture or on the seeding picture. And then if we got a little time, I found an article from ESPN that was put out not too long ago titled The 10 Best and 10 Worst Designated Player Signings in MLS History. And who made the top 10 will shock you. No, not clickbait. But I will tell you, only one Chicago Fire player made the list of 10 best and 10 worst. So of those 20, only one Chicago Fire player made it. I'll let you ponder that throughout the course of the episode. Who you think the Fire had on that list? Was it one of the 10 worst players or was it one of the 10 best players? And I know what you're thinking. You're like, are Schweinsteiger and Blanco good enough to make the 10 best? And is Shaqiri bad enough to make the 10 worst? I know that's what you're all thinking. I know, but we're going to get to that. Don't you worry. But first, I also want to thank our sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Bottled from a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland, Skira, which is Icelandic for clear, is some of the best drinking water, bottled water that you can get. Go out to your local 7-Eleven, grab a bottle or three, especially as we are still in those dog days of summer. August is in full swing. It is hot. I went for a walk just around the neighborhood at like 7 o'clock, and I was still sweating, partly because of the heat, partly because I am pretty out of shape. I'll admit that. But go get your Skira, stay hydrated, especially if you're out in the city at the various music festivals, if you're at the Fire match this weekend, tailgating, stay hydrated with Skira available at your local 7-Eleven. All right, looking at the Chicago Fire's event this past weekend, the Meet the Players party, just another reason why season ticket holders are treated so much better in Chicago than in any other city, I think. You are, as a season ticket member, entitled to go to this Meet the Players party. There's an hour of games and food and drink and sponsor booths set up, and then there's 2 hours worth of autograph sessions. My kids were so very excited. I took my two boys and then met another cousin, family friend. You know, when you're Greek, everyone's just related. They're a cousin, they're an aunt and uncle, whatever it is. So one of my cousins, I'll call it, and his son as well at the event. But my kids were so excited. They didn't want to wait till a reasonable hour to arrive. They were up and ready to go. So we arrived at about 9:15 at the Fire Pitch. Doors don't open till 10:30. We were there before a lot of the other workers from the organization were there. We were the third group of people in line, the fourth, fifth, and sixth people in line at this event. And then, of course, having two little boys, if any of you have kids, you know, the first thing we had to do was go in and go to the bathroom. So even though we were the third group of people in line, we still were like the 15th or 30th person to get to any of the events because, you know, the kids had to go use the bathroom as soon as we got in. But I digress. It was a wonderful event. As you get in, you're welcomed by members of the Chicago Fire organization. You're handed a food ticket, which was good for a Lou Malnati's buffet. They had thin crust, they had deep dish, they had all the different salads. You had Coke, Sprite, Heineken, water at the bar for you. And then if you wanted to go partake of the activities, it was like how they have the South Concourse set up pregame. You had the speed gun, you had the target shooting, you had the soccer beer pong, barrel pong, where you roll the ball up the ramp and try and drop it in a barrel. And if I may say so, the gentleman working that booth said I was the closest you could get without actually hitting the target. So very, very thankful to hear that. I think he was being very kind to me. Also, I wasn't giving it my all on the speed gun after my prior incident at the Navy Pier penalty kick virtual shootout. So I only hit 35 miles an hour on the speed gun this time. Not very good at all. But it was a lot of fun. And then you had the Lou Malnati's booth handing out some other stuff. You had C4, you handing out energy drinks. Ooh, don't drink that stuff too fast. It's sweet. It goes down like juice, but man, I was getting the jitters waiting in line for autographs. You had Moss Plus, Messi's sports drink, that was handing out samples and even allowing you to scan a QR code and take an augmented reality picture or video with Messi. Revolution Brewing was there, handing out samples of Cold Time, their lager, which delicious beer, great beer. I haven't had a bad beer from Revolution, and I'm not even paid to say that. It was a very enjoyable time. My boys were out just playing in pickup games. And then I started to notice the lines getting a little longer and said, okay, guys, come on, we got to get in line if we're going to try and get a couple groups of these autographs. And the way they set it up, I think you were allowed to start getting in line around 11 o'clock for the 11:30 autograph sessions. They had swag booths set up behind the autograph area. I'm sorry, not swag booths exactly, but I think you could buy some small items there to get signed, but they also had supporters groups recruiting people. They had a water tent there so you could get a drink while you waited. And then they had 5 lines, and each line led you to 4 players. And the way they broke it down, you could see you had a kind of starter, first-team player, popular player in each line. So headlining the various lines, I'll call them the headliners. It was Kuipers, it was Zinkernagel, it was Brian Gutierrez, it was, who else? Brady, and I forget who else was in the other line. But and then they would add in kind of, other starters, other sub players, other kind of second team, fire 2 fringe players and like that, mixing them up in and out throughout the line. So you got a very, very wide array of it. The only word of caution was, you only have 2 hours worth of autograph time before the players leave. And so the people at the fire are trying to get you to go through quick, sign a quick autograph, take a quick picture, and move on, which I appreciate. I'm not going to try to hog things here. I'm not trying to be best friends with the players. Just, shake their hands, tell them how much fun I have. Tell Sergio what the hell. My son's a future center D mid. He watches how you play all the time. Tell Chris Brady, hey, my other son, he's the goalkeeper. He's watching you. He loves playing keeper. And that's the thumbnail picture that you saw. Chris Brady, if you're looking on YouTube, the thumbnail for the video is Chris Brady giving my son a thumbs up as he posed for a picture. And by the way, if you look real close, you can see Joe Chatz in the background there with Tim Hotza from Men in Red and On Tap Sportsnet. So there's a little treat, little Easter egg in the background there. So it was a great event. We got to get in line for Hugo Kuiper's group first. That was who my son wanted to see the most. He got his Hugo Kuiper's poster at the prior game. Kuiper's autographed it. Next to him, Tom Barlow. Next to them, Jonathan Dean, as well as Christopher Cups. So those were the group that we got to meet in the first line. I was thrilled. I had a Hugo Kuiper's Chrome card from Topps that I opened recently that I was able to get him to autograph. So that was something real special for me. I really enjoyed it. And then in the next group of players that we got in line for, it was Carlos Terán, Sergio Orejel, and now I am spacing on who else was sitting next to them. It was Sam Rogers and then Chris Brady. So the boys got to get their posters signed, their cards signed. I had a little soccer ball that I had signed. It was a really cool experience. All the players were so nice. Honestly, Carlos Terán, people say oh, it's the Colombian in him where he's so full of life and energetic. You totally see it. It is not just a phrase that they're paying lip service to the guy. He was chit-chatting, and again, this was like an hour and a half into the event, and he is still just boom, boom, energy, chit-chatting. He's teasing Sergio Orejel next to him. Sergio's signing one of my kids' things, and he's like, sign it El Crab, Sergio El Crab. And I'm like, is that his nickname, really? And Sergio's laughing, and Terán's teasing him. Those guys were having a good time, and as a result of it, my boys were having fun, the fans were having fun. It was a great event. I will say next year, if you just want to get autographs, you have to get in line as early as possible. We only made it through 2 lines in the 2-hour time frame that we were there. Had we started a little closer to the front at the beginning, or maybe we could have hurried up and rushed, maybe got my kids up to the front and had the players maybe feel bad and sign something for the boys. Maybe we could have gotten through a third group. But yeah, you're getting at least 2 groups in the 2 hours you're there. So that's something to keep in mind next year. If you're going for autographs, prioritize the autographs. We were going for the experience. The boys had a lot of fun playing the games, playing soccer with other kids, hanging out with Sparky, trying Moss 4 and 5 different times. They went back to go get Messi's energy or sports drink, and then having pizza at the fire pitch to end the day. It was a really great event, a lot of fun. I put some pictures up on Twitter of the items I got autographed and some of the pictures with the kids and the players. So it was a really good time. Also, I got to just give a shout out to everyone who I got to meet and talk to while I was at the event. First off, my season ticket rep, Maddie, she was out there at the front of the line greeting people, welcoming everybody in. Guys, if you are on the fence about getting season tickets and you want to talk to someone about it, let me know. I'll introduce you to my rep, Maddie. She has taken more than great care of my family and I since we became season ticket members 2 seasons ago. So I will introduce you. She'll take care of you. She'll hook you up. She's one of the best people that I've worked with in the fire. Got to see my friend Stacy, who does community relations for the fire. She hung out at the end, talked to us a little bit after the players went inside. Great seeing her. Also, I want to recognize Joe Chatz, Tim Hotza, Alex Calabrese. At the end of the event, when they were done with their media duties and reporter, photographer type duties, they were kind enough to stop and chat with me and my boys and my friends a little bit, and really entertaining. Joe Chatz, the smile you see on him in his little after game videos that he puts out on social media is the smile that is always on his face. And of course, Alex and Tim, the professionals, asking the boys, who's your favorite player? Who did you get to see? Let me see your autographs. It was fantastic chatting with those guys. Also, Gary, the mod for the Chicago Fire subreddit, came up, said hi. Great seeing him. Gary, you're right. I do got to post a little bit more on Reddit. I'll start that hopefully next week with the upcoming episodes. Got to see Harlem Rose. Got to see Tom from Geneva. Tom, I'm so glad that you walked in right behind me and recognized me and tapped me on the shoulder, said hi, Nick, and it was a real pleasure to meet you. A lot taller in person than I ever thought you were, Tom, that's for sure. Not that I'm a man of great stature myself, but definitely a lot taller than I would have imagined. I hope you and your wife had a great time at the event as well. So just wanted to recognize a few people who helped make that day a special event for me and my family. Also, shout out to Sparky. When his handler was saying, Sparky, time's up, we got to go inside, Sparky ran away from him and went and took about 7 or 8 more pictures and signed about 3 or 4 more autographs with the kids. So good on you, Sparky. That is why you're the best mascot in all of MLS. All right, so that was the season ticket holder event. That's how the highlights for me. I would have loved to get into Philip Zinkernagel's line, get an autograph, say hi to him. He by far had the longest line of the entire event, and it stayed the longest line of the entire event. So that we were like, okay, how can we maximize our time here? And so that's what we were trying to do. But a great event overall. Looking forward to it next year. Looking forward, hopefully, to some other Meet the Player events throughout the course of the remainder of the season. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. And let's talk about some of the transfers and moves within the Fire and around MLS during the summer transfer window. First, we have to note with the Fire, Omari Glasgow has been placed on loan to Loudoun United, DC United's second team. That opens up an international roster spot for the Chicago Fire, and that combined with Chris Mueller going on to the season-ending injury list with his heart condition opens up a senior roster spot as well. So the Chicago Fire now have an international senior roster spot that they can fill, and as we know, they've been in pursuit of the likes of Patrick Berg from Bodo Glimt over in Norway as a potential DP. However, the asking price for him was just too high for the Fire, so they moved on to other targets. Maybe it's just negotiating. Maybe we'll be back to that. But what really has come of the Chicago Fire giving themselves a little bit of roster flexibility is bringing on Andre Franco on loan, but not as a designated player, which would be fantastic if they could keep that DP spot open or have the extra $1 million in GAM from a 2DP 422 roster spot. Either way, fine with me by bringing in Andre Franco as a targeted allocation money, a TAM player, someone who has a contract that exceeds the cap limit for the year for the player, but not in the designated player realm. They can buy it down using this targeted allocation money. So here is the article from Men in Red 97 Media, as written by Alex Calabrese, discussing this Andre Franco loan discussion that's still ongoing, nothing official yet. But he says, the Chicago Fire are in negotiations to sign Andre Franco on loan from FC Porto. Sources told Men in Red 97 Media. The interest was reported earlier by Give Me Sport, Tom Bogert writing there. Franco, a 27-year-old Portuguese midfielder, will crucially not be a designated player as suggested in the initial report. Instead, he'll arrive on loan for the remainder of the season, serving as Chris Mueller's roster replacement since Mueller was added to the season-ending injury list. The Fire are able to sign a player with a cap hit equal to or less than Mueller's for the remainder of the season. So there's the rule in place that is allowing Franco to come on. So a little bit of what I said before about getting that international spot and senior spot, but also if you're going to replace someone due to season-ending injury, you're allowed to do that, but you cannot sign him to a higher contract. So the Fire will have an option to make the move permanent after the 2025 campaign. That's what everybody wants in MLS. Roster flexibility. Great negotiating here. Everyone's been either ripping on or praising Inter Miami for how they have been able to constantly structure and restructure their roster to bring in these big name players. LAFC has been having to do it a little bit too, between Gareth Bale, Olivier Giroud, and now bringing in Son from Tottenham. So they're constantly in this roster construction mode, and it looks like the Fire are starting to pick up on it a little bit. All right, Alex continues in his article. Although he's joining the Fire from one of Portugal's biggest clubs, Franco's hardly played in the last 12 months. The attacking midfielder made 17 appearances and 4 starts in the 2024-25 season, totaling just 425 minutes of action in Liga Portugal. He featured for 8 minutes in the Club World Cup here in the U.S., coming off the bench against Palmeiras. Franco will add another dimension to an already packed midfield unit for the Fire. 22-year-old Brian Gutierrez has played the bulk of the minutes as the most advanced of the midfield trio, advanced meaning forward-moving attacking player. But he has lacked consistency in the final third. Franco can also play on the wing, a position filled by Jonathan Bamba, Marin Haile Selassie, and Philip Zinkernagel, and, as we thought at the beginning of the year, Chris Mueller, but as we know, he is on season-ending injury. As part of the loan agreement, the Fire will have an option to make the move permanent at the end of the season. He will fill Amari Glasgow's open international slot, as I mentioned, which was vacated as Glasgow moved to Loudoun United for the rest of 2025. As Franco is not a DP, most importantly, he is not a DP for this season, the Fire's third and final slot remains open. Earlier this summer, Director of Football and head coach Greg Berhalter made important bids to sign central midfielders Kevin De Bruyne and Patrick Berg, but neither move ultimately materialized. And Alex ends the article by recapping the roster rules here. If the Fire do not sign a third DP, they will stick with the 2+4+2 roster construction path, which would leave an open U22 initiative slot and give them an additional $1 million in general allocation money. So that is the latest on some of the Fire moves. Andre Franco potentially coming on loan. That deal is still in the works. All the other things that are going on around the league, transfer news, and you can go over to MLSsoccer.com, go to the news section of the website, go to the transfer tracker, and they'll have all the details of all the moves we are about to cover here. So, diving into this lightning round of transfers here, Atlanta United signed defender Nick Sesak, and that's Nick, N-Y-K, Sesak from their Atlanta United 2 affiliate. St. Louis City exercised the buyout on Joachim Nilsson, so he's out. Atlanta United also signed homegrown midfielder Cooper Sanchez. Let's see, what else has Atlanta United done? They've acquired midfielder Steven Alzate from Hull City. So all you Premier League and English Championship, is Hull in the Championship or Second Division? I'm trying to remember exactly. Anyway, all you English soccer aficionados, there's a name for you. They also bought out Luis Abram. Atlanta just making moves. They've loaned Noah Cobb to Colorado. Gosh, they have done a lot here to kind of rebuild this roster after underperforming the first half of the season, getting, then with Lade Loth coming in, still underperforming. Miguel Almiron coming back, still underperforming. So they are starting to really turn over what looks like to be the back end of their roster and see if they can't find the right guys to complement their big stars and signings. Now, this is an interesting one, especially for the top team in the East. Philadelphia Union acquire Milan Iloske from FC Nordsjælland. I hope I pronounced that correctly. From Danish Superliga side FC Nordsjælland. He'll be under contract through 2027 with an option for 2028. In order to facilitate the move, here's some MLS roster rule stuff for you soccer sickos out there. Philadelphia picked Iloske in the waiver order after acquiring the number 1 position from CF Montreal. In exchange, Montreal gets the 21st spot in the waiver order and up to $250,000 in GAM, general allocation money, $100,000 guaranteed and $150,000 conditional. This is Iloske's second MLS club this season, as he spent April through July on loan at San Diego from Nordsjælland and had 10 goals in 471 minutes with San Diego, including a 4-goal performance at Vancouver Whitecaps FC. So that is a big move, an internal league move here. RSL, Iloske came up with RSL. He was a homegrown there, played college soccer at UCLA, one of the top colleges in the United States for soccer. And it says here, he joins a deep Union striker pool led by Ty Baribo, Mikel Ura, and Bruno Damiani, the latter two each with 4 goals. So this is a guy who they're looking to be it seems to be they're looking for a second option for Ty Baribo, some security in the event Baribo needs to take some time off, get some minutes, God forbid be injured, but possibly be transferred out after this season. So this is a guy who can right the ship for them, as well as give them a more reliable second option than Ure and Damiani's 4 goals each, whereas Baribo's on 15. So this is a signing that makes the Union even better and gives them a little bit more depth and flexibility. Charlotte has signed English defender Harry Toffolo from Nottingham. LAFC acquire Ryan Porteous from Watford. The Rapids sign English defender Rob Holding from Crystal Palace. FC Cincinnati acquire Moroccan forward Ayoub Jabari. Orlando City get Tyrese Spencer from Toronto. Sporting Kansas City signed defender Alan Montes from Necaxa in Liga MX. Let's see, Salt Lake signed a new DP striker, Rowan Cruz from Botafogo. What I'm seeing here, and this could just be me, maybe I'm reading into it too much. We've got movement from Botafogo. We've got movement from Necaxa. We've got movement. The Dynamo have signed defender Antonio Carlos from Fluminense. Where else are we seeing movement from? Just looking around. Anyway, I think that's enough of a sample size, though, to support my point that the Club World Cup has brought a lot of eyes onto both the Club World Cup and Leagues Cup have brought a lot of eyes onto American soccer and onto Major League Soccer. We're seeing players from all these clubs featured, and it is really bringing the transfer market to the United States, to Major League Soccer. And so would a guy like Rowan Cruz at Botafogo, would he want to come to Salt Lake had he not had the experience of playing in the United States during the Club World Cup? Would a guy like Alan Montes be willing to come to play for Sporting Kansas City to Kansas City from Mexico if he had not had the experience of playing here in Leagues Cup or having competition with MLS, whether through All-Star games or Leagues Cup? These are things we don't know, but can't say definitively, but I think there's an argument to be made that as a result of everything that Major League Soccer has done through Leagues Cup and through the Club World Cup recently, you're seeing the draw. You're seeing that be used as part of marketing, that you can play in high-stakes, worldwide attention, high-class games here in Major League Soccer and get noticed. And if your dream is to go play a top 5 club in Europe, then you can play against them in MLS and you can possibly get to them by being very successful in MLS. So I think that's A lot of great stuff that, again, maybe I'm reading into it too much, maybe it's too early, but it's hard to ignore all these connections now that we're seeing from South American and Mexican clubs after Leagues Cup and Club World Cup. Okay, a couple other things to point out. Leo Alfonso traded from Inter Miami to Atlanta United. Montreal acquires Efrain Morales from Atlanta United. Let's see, on the second page here, Whitecaps get Kenji Cabrera and Thomas Mueller. I don't think it's been officially announced, like the official terms, but it's a done deal. Let's see, who else? Montreal have transferred George Campbell, defender George Campbell, formerly fringe USMNT player George Campbell, to West Brom. Fantastic move there. Charlotte has transferred Patrick Ajimang to Derby County. And let's see, any other big stuff that we need to review real quick? I'm trying to see if there's any big names or any kind of Eastern Conference moves of import here. The biggest one, though, of course, the recent reporting of Son to LAFC. This is the legendary Tottenham Spurs player and Korean international Son Heung-min is ready to sign with LAFC. He's 33. He spent 10 years at Tottenham, and it is reported that it would be a $26 million incoming transfer fee, which would break the record of highest incoming fee in Major League Soccer. That was just set last season with Atlanta United paying $22 million for Emmanuel Latte-Loth. Let's see if there's any other stuff about this. Let's see. Son is set to join LAFC. They currently sit 6th in the Western Conference, though they have 2 games in hand on the teams above them. Let's see. He was at Bayern Leverkusen prior to joining Tottenham. He also had an offer from Saudi Arabian side Al Ittihad, although he opted to remain at Tottenham. That offer came in back in 2023. Additional information provided by Tom Bogert and Ben Jacobs over at GiveMeSport.com. They've reached total agreements and personal terms and are finalizing the signing. This was 2 days ago on August 3rd. Any other major things to be noted? So, from looking at it from a Chicago Fire lens, is he going to be here in time for the match Saturday? Probably not, if they haven't formally announced the signing, if they got to get visa issues, work permits, all that sort of thing. So, fortunately, we're not going to see him in Chicago. Also, from a Chicago Fire perspective, the Fire have always either overtly tried to or been encouraged to sign a player of Mexican descent or Latino descent to really connect with that community in the Chicago area. And here now we see LAFC signing a South Korean star, and some people are speculating that this also is going to really bolster the Asian community and the South Korean community supporting Major League Soccer, supporting LAFC. So something to kind of keep an eye on for Chicago, potential parallel there if they should go out and sign a Latino. However, Chicago is such a cosmopolitan city. Yes, we recognize the great Latino, Hispanic, Mexican American communities here in Chicago, but there's also a very large Polish community, and I was even working for a nonprofit that did some work within the Polish community. It was a home care agency. This was a few years back when the Fire signed Kasper Szybylko, and the one girl who was Polish, who knew nothing about sports at all, she knew Kasper Szybylko was coming to the Chicago Fire. So there's something to be said, too, for European connections with Chicago communities as well. So that's the big one. Also, Thomas Mueller to Vancouver has been the other blockbuster signing from from a headline, from a name perspective. And now we are starting to see reports come out that Bayern Munich did not want him to go to Vancouver. They wanted him to go to LAFC due to their partnership with LAFC, but Mueller chose his own path and ended up signing with the Whitecaps. Now, this is going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, of course, but also off the field, on the field especially, how they're going to integrate him with Brian White, with Brian Gauld, with Sebastian Berhalter. I think Berhalter is going to have an even better statistical season now that he can be serving things up to Thomas Mueller there. So that is all the transfer analysis. That is the Chicago Fire Meet the Players event. That is the upcoming match against LAFC. Everything that I wanted to get out. Man, we've already exceeded a half hour. It never surprises me how long that I can talk. Or I should say it always surprises me how long I can talk. So, you know what? I'm going to have to put out another episode real quick so we can talk about the 10 best and worst DPs in MLS history. I will tell you, though, I will answer the question so I won't leave you racking your brain and tease you to the next episode, that the one player from the Chicago Fire to make this list made the 10 worst list. At number 6, Nery Castillo was named the 6th worst designated player signing in MLS history by ESPN, saying that Castillo should have been the creme de la creme of DP signings. He was a Mexico international with phenomenal skill and goal-scoring ability, had proven himself in Europe, and was only 26 years old. The Fire thought they got a prime-aged superstar who would ignite the city's Mexican population and stamp their place locally as well as in MLS. They paid an eye-opening $2 million just on the loan fee. Instead, they got the heart of Castillo's decline. He just made 8 appearances for the Fire, did not record a goal or assist, played 4 more years for 4 clubs before retiring, and never wore the Mexican shirt again. So his career came to Chicago to die. And if I recall, when I started this podcast 2.5 years ago, and started talking Chicago Fire and sharing my stories with meeting people in the organization and players and becoming a season ticket holder, I was contacted by someone claiming to develop players and run camps and consult with clubs. And I'm almost positive it was Nery Castillo trying to make a name for himself again in Chicago. And I'm just like, nothing about you exudes any sort of professionalism or any sort of actual plan or proven results or anything like that. So it was a very short conversation with Nery Castillo, soccer consultant. But we'll go through the rest of the list in the next episode, as well as get into a little bit more of a deep dive into the LAFC match that's coming up this weekend. I unfortunately will not be able to make this one, but hopefully I will be seeing you all at the following match against St. Louis. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like, subscribe, rate, review. We've got a number of 5-star reviews. All the reviews that I've gotten for the podcast through iTunes, all 5 stars reviews. So let's keep that going. Let's drive the algorithm up. Like the video on YouTube, add a comment. Let's keep things going. Share the show. And as always, let's go Fire.